Out of the wreckage of 9/11, with funding tied directly to the CIA, a single company set out to build an artificial intelligence that could see everything and everyone at once. It monitors wars, borders, disease outbreaks, and money flows. Governments rely on it, corporations build on it, and most people have no idea it's even there. This company is Palantir, often described as the most dangerous AI firm on the planet. September 11th, 2001. 4 hijacked planes, 2 collapsing towers, nearly 3,000 lives gone, and one question that haunted intelligence agencies for years afterward. How did we fail to see it coming? The United States wasn't lacking information. Different agencies each held fragments of the truth, but no one assembled the full picture. There was no unified view, no shared screen where everything came together. And that's where Silicon Valley saw an opening. What if software could do what humans couldn't? What if a system could comb through endless oceans of emails, surveillance videos, passport databases, satellite imagery, and financial transactions, then surface the next Osama before he ever boarded a plane? That idea led to Peter Thiel, PayPal's co-founder and resident libertarian thinker, who had already made a fortune using algorithms to stop credit card fraud. Now he was focused on a much bigger threat. If software could flag a stolen credit card in seconds, why couldn't it identify a stolen airplane? He named the project Palantir after the all-seeing stones in The Lord of the Rings, a perfect title for a company fixated on total visibility wrapped in secrecy. Palantir launched like a tech startup straight out of a spy thriller, a tiny team, a locked-down office. And their first investor wasn't Sequoia or Andreessen Horowitz. It was in-q-tel, the CIA's own venture capital arm. Yes, the CIA runs a VC fund. And no, that's not something you're meant to think about too much. The mission was clear. Create a platform capable of doing what no analyst ever could on their own: identify threats hiding in plain sight. The challenge was massive. Take chaotic, siloed government data, passport records, drone feeds, field notes, and merge it into a single godlike view of reality. On paper, it sounded simple. In reality, it was brutal. Early versions of Palantir were clunky and overbuilt. One official compared using it to piloting a space shuttle just to locate your car keys. Government agencies pushed back. Bureaucrats hesitated. The NSA dismissed it as clever but unnecessary. The FBI found it unsettling. Still, behind closed doors, the company kept going. Quietly, methodically, almost obsessively. They weren't chasing quick profits. They were chasing conviction, the belief that software could stop another 9/11 from ever happening. As Palantir expanded, its legend grew with it. Inside the company, everything reinforced the idea that this was different from Silicon Valley as usual. No press tours. Clients kept anonymous. Engineers bound by strict silence agreements. If Google felt like an amusement park, Palantir felt like a fortified bunker. At the center stood Alex Karp, a philosophy PhD with untamed hair and wireframe glasses. He looked like someone who wandered out of a Nietzsche seminar by mistake. Thiel played the chess master. Karp was the ascetic. He would lecture staff about power and responsibility. "We're not selling surveillance," he'd say. "We're selling understanding." It sounded elegant in theory. In reality, Palantir wasn't just offering software. It was offering certainty. The promise that buried inside endless noise was the truth, and only Palantir had the tools to uncover it. The mission began with counterterrorism, but it didn't stay there. By 2007, the U.S. was deeply entangled in Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting 2 wars with 10,000 disconnected spreadsheets. Intelligence reports were scattered everywhere. Improvised explosive devices were detonating daily. Commanders were drowning in data points with no way to link them together. That's when Palantir arrived. Its software, known as Gotham, fused bomb records, insurgent networks, phone metadata, and satellite maps into a single interface that actually made sense. For the first time, you could see the entire kill chain laid out visually. It even looked familiar, almost like Google Maps. Special forces embraced it. Analysts depended on it. Generals started demanding it. The Department of Defense took notice. Palantir didn't just identify who planted a bomb. It revealed who bought the phone, who moved the money, who met whom, and exactly when and where it all happened. The technology was designed to hunt enemies of the state. But here's the disturbing part. You don't need to be on a CIA watch list for your data to be collected, mapped, and sold. Right now, thousands of data brokers are quietly gathering and trading your personal information, your name, home address, and financial details, often without your knowledge. That's why today's video is sponsored by Incogni. This goes far beyond annoying spam calls. It's about personal security. Criminals use this data for identity theft, and stalkers can literally purchase your address to locate where you and your family live. Trying to erase this information on your own can take years. Incogni handles it automatically. You can see it live on my dashboard right now. They're actively pushing data brokers to erase my profiles. They've also rolled out a major new feature, custom removals, now included with their unlimited and family plans. If your information shows up on a specific people search site, you don't have to sit around and wait. You simply paste in the URL, and Incogni's privacy agents handle everything from there. If bad actors can't locate you, they can't hurt you. That's why it's time to pull your personal data off the open market. Head to incogni.com/crayoncapital and use the code crayoncapital to get an exclusive 60% discount. Once again, that's incogni.com/crayoncapital. Use code crayoncapital for 60% off. You'll find the link in the description below. Take action now before your data ends up in the wrong hands. And now back to the story. At this point, the promise had transformed into a real product. And for once in the history of military technology, soldiers actually wanted the new software. Not because it was forced on them, but because it genuinely increased their chances of staying alive. But in Washington, power works differently. If you're not seated at the table, you're probably the meal. And Palantir wasn't invited. While troops praised the software in the field, things turned hostile back in DC. Who are these people? No long-standing contracts, no clearances, no golf outings. They weren't part of the inner circle. Palantir had no lobbyists, no revolving door hires, no expensive dinners with procurement officials. When the Army attempted to hand a $200 million intelligence contract to a traditional defense contractor without competition, Palantir did something unheard of. They sued. A Silicon Valley startup took the U.S. Army to court and won. A federal judge ruled that the Army had violated the law by refusing to even evaluate Palantir's software, despite the fact that soldiers were already relying on it in combat. The message was unmistakable. Innovation could no longer be ignored, but controversy was now unavoidable. By then, Palantir had already proven its value in war zones, so the next question became obvious. What else could this technology be used for? The answer was unsettling. Immigration and Customs Enforcement signed on. The Department of Homeland Security followed soon after. And just like that, Palantir's software shifted from tracking terrorists overseas to monitoring people at home. Tools once used to stop roadside bombs were now flagging undocumented workers, mapping social connections, and assigning threat scores. This person's cousin rented a truck near a suspected safe house, suggesting possible courier activity. Recommend detention. Translation? His cousin owns a Honda. Pick him up. Civil liberties organizations raised alarms. Immigrant communities felt watched. And inside Palantir, some employees began to question their role. Leaked internal letters surfaced. Small protests erupted. One engineer quit, saying, "I signed up to stop terrorists, not to deport families." Outside the office walls, though, the contracts kept rolling in. More agencies, bigger budgets. The mission had stretched and blurred. Palantir was no longer just a counterterrorism firm. It had evolved into something else entirely, a surveillance engine, a digital battlefield brain, a government-backed crystal ball. And it was only getting started. By the late 2000s, Palantir had dominated war zones, outmaneuvered the Pentagon, and secured deals with nearly every three-letter agency in existence. But one major frontier remained untouched: corporate America. Not because Palantir lacked interest, but because for years they insisted they were above it. We don't harvest user data like big tech. We build software for governments, we save lives, and for a long time that was true, until reality set in. Governments move slowly, CEOS sign checks quickly, and that realization sparked a shift. The pivot. Palantir introduced a new product called Foundry. Think of it as Gotham's cleaner, more approachable sibling. Still incredibly powerful. Still unsettling. Just wearing a tailored suit instead of combat boots. Foundry pulls together all of a company's internal data and then tells executives exactly what to do, like which logistics manager to fire. Overnight, everyone wanted access. Oil companies used it to optimize drilling operations. Pharmaceutical giants relied on it to streamline clinical trials. Hedge funds used it to anticipate markets faster than Bloomberg terminals could refresh. We used to make decisions based on instinct. Now I make them with this glowing rectangle. Within just a few years, Palantir quietly became a digital consigliere to Fortune 500 companies, guiding decisions faster, leaner, and often without anyone fully understanding how. Because Palantir doesn't just display data, it doesn't simply offer choices, it issues instructions. Shut down Plant 3, reroute shipments, increase inventory in Region 7. But what if I said Plant 3. When COVID-19 hit, Palantir was everywhere. The U.S. government used it to track outbreaks, manage vaccine distribution, and stabilize supply chains in real time. Hospitals relied on it. Airlines integrated it. Even the British government used it to predict where the next shortages of protective equipment would emerge. And this is where things start to feel unsettling. Almost no one outside Palantir truly understands how the system operates. Not completely. It isn't a spreadsheet. It isn't transparent. It's a black box with influence. And not everyone was comfortable with that. During a global pandemic, an unelected private company was effectively given control over national supply chains and critical healthcare decisions. That power wasn't voted on. It was delegated. Why? Because the interface looked impressive? Maybe. But Foundry didn't care about the criticism. It delivered outcomes. And in the corporate world, results are what get rewarded. By 2020, Palantir had evolved from a Tolkien-inspired startup into a defense contractor and then into a multinational strategic advisor. And at last, it was ready to enter the public markets. Palantir's long-anticipated IPO. Except, wait a second. What is this? A direct listing? Exactly. No flashy roadshow. No grand sales pitch. Just a low-key announcement. We're tradable now. Followed by a surprise, almost Dumbledore-like appearance on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. When the financials were released, investors were puzzled. Palantir wasn't profitable. Growth was modest. Margins were unusual. And yet, demand for the stock was intense. Why? Because investors weren't buying a normal tech company. They were buying Palantir. They weren't purchasing software. They were buying the story, the secrecy, the mission, the edge. To many, Palantir wasn't just a business. It was the operating system behind power itself, and they wanted in. By the 2020s, Palantir had stopped being just a company. It had become infrastructure, hidden behind military briefings, embedded in NATO dashboards, powering intelligence reports discussed only behind closed doors. Need to track armored units in Ukraine and run real-time war simulations? Use Gotham. Want a multilingual digital command center that updates faster than the news cycle? Congratulations. You've licensed Palantir. They weren't simply assisting the military anymore. They were becoming the military's brain. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Palantir was already there. Not with soldiers, not with weapons, with data. Helping Ukrainian forces map Russian supply routes, fine-tune artillery targeting, and anticipate drone attacks. They called it AI for warfighting. A sleek label, a chilling capability. Suddenly, battlefield intelligence wasn't just satellite imagery. It was algorithms quietly advising, aim here. And with that level of power came inevitable backlash. Privacy advocates were outraged. Civil rights groups accused Palantir of being a digital war profiteer. One critic labeled it the Oracle of Orwell, and the concern went beyond warfare. Palantir's technology was being used by police departments to forecast crime, by border agencies to flag suspects, by governments to decide who deserved scrutiny and who could be trusted. And almost none of it was visible to the public. Activists warned about racial bias, predictive policing, and algorithm-driven discrimination. They asked a dangerous question. What happens when flawed data turns into a digital warrant? Palantir's response was blunt. We save lives, full stop, and we're not responsible for how clients use our tools. We built the hammer. If someone uses it to hang a picture or to break into a neighbor's house, that's on them. Have a nice day. Internally, Palantir maintained that they were the ethical tech company, that they refused contracts with China, that they drew clear lines against authoritarian governments. But the boundary between defense and domination was growing fuzzier by the day. Palantir had created the most advanced data fusion engine on Earth, and the natural next step wasn't just predicting wars. It was predicting everything. The company moved into AI-driven decision-making. They called it meta-constellation because Skynet was already taken. Want to simulate economic collapse, disease spread, or civil unrest? Foundry could now do that, and it didn't just forecast the future, it recommended how to shape it. Governments quietly began using it for long-term strategic planning. Corporations ran it across entire global supply chains. Palantir started describing itself as the operating system for modern enterprises, and possibly for modern states. But that raises the real question. When one private company knows more than your cabinet, your generals, and your central bank combined, who's actually in charge? Because for all the secrecy surrounding Palantir, one thing is undeniable. It was never only about software. It was about power, the kind that's invisible, unaccountable, and always watching. It began with a promise to prevent the next 9/11, a tool meant to protect, not control. But over time, that mission blurred. And now it helps shape the very world it once set out to defend. If you want more videos breaking down stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.